Friends, enemies, and those of you who have yet to decide which one you are, I greet you. Hello. Once again the sun has set in my studio apartment in Japan, and once again the calendar tells me it is October, the month of Halloween. It is a perfect opportunity for me to share with you a story. Now, to give you a bit of a setting of this story, I must go back a few months to August. In August, I visited America. You see, I am from America, although I do live in Japan. I am from America, and I do visit there from time to time, the last time being 10 years ago, but still a visit. While I was there, I noticed something missing, something no longer on the streets. And it is something that I sorely miss, for nostalgia's sake, as well as usefulness. I am talking about the all-night diners that are open 24 hours, serving food, coffee, and assorted desserts. Although you may have never been to an all-night cafe in the middle of the night, nursing a hangover, a heartbreak, or a headache from studying too many exams, I assure you there are many people who have. Now, in the dead of night, many people go to these all-night diners all over the world, or at least they used to. Now, my story will have to do with one particular case of two odd parties, shall I say, meeting in an all-night diner in Tokyo, with me stuck in the middle of their stares. But that will have to wait until next time. Before I go, a little house cleaning if you don't mind. Now, I do have a Patreon account which I'll have listed in the comments or bio or whatever, but don't worry, don't consider it a task or anything. It's just there if you feel the need to send me some money. But if you don't, I completely understand. Until next time, good night. Friends, enemies, and those of you who have yet to decide which one you are, I greet you. Hello. Once again the sun has dipped down, and it is now night in my studio apartment, and I'd like to begin this Halloween story proper. The last time I discussed the benefits of an all-night restaurant. This story starts at such a place. It was roughly 2009-2010, in fall, where I found myself nursing a broken heart. I figured to cheer myself up, I might as well visit Tokyo for a few days. I don't live in Tokyo, but I do visit there from time to time, and it is an exciting place to visit, and unfortunately the excitement had kept me up, gave me a case of insomnia. Although I twisted and turned in my hotel bedroom, I realized it would be useless, and figured that I should visit an all-night cafe or restaurant that I had seen around my hotel. As I made my way down there, I realized how cool the air felt after months of the hot, humid weather of Japan. It was refreshing. When I finally got into the restaurant, it was the dead of night. Not many people were in this restaurant. I took a booth, and not being hungry, I decided to order what is commonly called in Japan a drink bar ticket, or drink bar, which is nothing to do with an alcoholic bar per se, but it does allow you to have unlimited soda drinks, unlimited coffee, and what I was enjoying that evening, unlimited hot cocoa. As I was contemplating my day ahead and thinking of what I have done the previous day, 2 odd people approached my booth and sat down without invitation. When I say odd, I mean like they appeared that they didn't really belong in the area. But being a foreigner in Japan, everyone, like myself, doesn't really appear to be from or belonging in the area. They had a certain more of that amount of not being of the area or belonging of the area. Maybe it was their outfits, which was rather old in style, as in suits, dusty suits, but well pressed. Maybe it was their manners or lack of manners as they approached my table and sat down without invitation, but it seemed that they were a bit forceful and out of place.
You!
One began.
You look like an honest person. Are you an honest person? Tell the truth.
I don't know if you could tell how funny and ridiculous that question is. If I wasn't an honest person, but given the chance to answer that question, I could obviously lie. Is this a paradox? Is this a riddle? What do you mean, good sir, to ask me at such a night like this that question?
He passes your foolish riddle. He should be the one to choose for us.
The other one said.
Why, yes, I agree. He passes the test. We shall ask him.
I see. You shall ask me a question. Is this what you will be doing?
More than that, boy. You'll be settling a dispute we have between us. Are you ready to answer this question?
I'm not sure, but I suppose you can ask, and I will try to answer the best I can. Of course, dear audience, I'm telling you all this with a caveat of saying that in the back of my mind I had thought that perhaps these 2 people had been drinking a little too much and had gotten in a heated argument, and although I did not know them nor did I like them, I wanted to try to appease them for the sake of the fact that I was in the same spot they were and they approached. But of course, if I had to lose anything on it, I probably would walk away, since I was free to do so.
Here, take a look at this.
And with that said, an item was produced from one of their pockets, and it was slid in front of my hot cocoa, as in to say, I should be paying attention to their concerns and not my hot cocoa. It was beginning to grate on my nerves, but I let it slide. I looked at the item that was now there. It was a ruby with gold trimmings, possibly part of a brooch or something. I didn't know exactly what to make of it. Yes, it was jewelry, and I am no expert on jewelry, but I looked upon it, and I looked at those 2 people, and then I looked upon it again, and I looked upon the 2 people, and they were looking at me very in-depthly, as if I was to answer a question they had yet to ask. This went on for a few moments, comedically, but then I finally said something to the effect of, "Well, what is it?"
It's not important. What is important is your answer. Who does it belong to? Does it belong to me, or does it belong to him? That is your question that you must answer.
Ah, I see. I think this task is a little impossible for me to answer or to judge, considering that I have no knowledge of the background or the origin of this particular jewel. So, unfortunately, I cannot answer your question. I do think you guys are beginning to annoy me, but, if you can give me a reason to continue to humor you, I will try to answer your question. Is there any reason for me to stick around?
Ah, you're not an apathetic person, are you? You don't strike me as an apathetic person. Look me in the eyes and tell me you're not an apathetic person. No, look me in the eyes and confirm your tell of truth that you're not an apathetic person as well.
They begin to quarrel, and I, suddenly feeling much tired, I get up. Gentlemen, you strike me annoying. I think I have lost my patience at such a time in this evening. I am going to try to leave and go back to my place to rest. And may I say, whoever has the gem, I can only hope the gem is happy in some weird way. Is that a good answer for both of you crazy people? Good night.
Yes, it is a good answer. You answered our question wisely, smartly, truthfully, adequately. Thank you. Yes, I gotta say you did well. But I have to ask, how?
How? It's very, very late, very, very early, and I can't think of how. Only where. And that where is my bed, which I will be going to soon. Good night, I say to you.
And I say to you, no good night.
Huh? I say, startled. What do you mean by that, good sir? At this point, his friend calmed him down.
Good night, sir. We may see each other again.
I sincerely hope not. And with that, I left the restaurant. I paid my bill and went to my hotel, thinking it was over. But I was sorely mistaken, which I had found out in the next episode. Please, folks, join me, won't you, as we continue this story. But before I go, I'll add my usual message that yes, I am on Patreon. And yes, if you feel the need to throw money in my direction, that's one way to do it. And last but not least, I hope you have a good night. Sweet dreams.
Friends, enemies, and those of you who have yet to decide which one you are, I greet you. Hello. The sun has gone down in my studio apartment in Japan, and it is now night. The perfect time for me to continue my story about 24-hour restaurants, or the bat, the scarab, their conflict, and me. Last time in my story, I was telling you how during 2009 or 2010 or so, I had visited Tokyo. And while I was there, I went to an all-night cafe in the dead of night to get rid of some insomnia, to relax, as I was all jittery and excited about my travels to Tokyo. While I was there, I was approached by two strange people who wanted me to solve a debate which was practically unsolvable between them. Something about a ruby and who it belonged to, and that was about it. No backstory or no information behind it. I left them disgusted with giving them a throwaway answer that I forgot about. I was thinking of those two strange people as I was sitting in the same restaurant waiting for my breakfast to be delivered to my table. You see, the restaurant was close to my hotel, and it was easier to have something there than anywhere else. As I was waiting, someone came up to me and directed my attention away from my phone, which I was scrolling for information on news and social stuff. Excuse me, do you mind if I, sit down with you, please?
Ah, good morning. Please join me. I'm barely awake, but I'm getting there. Please have a seat. Hello.
I look upon this person. It is another weary traveler of the world, someone belonging not to Japan but other countries. I looked at him, and he sat down. I I saw you last night here. You were here last night, right? Yes, I was. About 2 or 3 in the morning. Yes. And I talked to those two strange guys, right? Ah, I was just thinking about those two strange people and their weird way of asking questions. Or do you remember the the answer you gave them about the ruby, who it belonged to? And do you hear the scarabs? Uh, my answer, I don't quite recall. Just give me a moment as I wake up in scarabs. I'm sorry. I think they're scarabs. Just clicky sound. Do you hear it? The clicky sound. I do not hear the clicky sound of. Yeah, it's like the sound of millions of bugs just skirtling around in the back. Do you hear it? Do you hear? No, I don't hear it. Do you hear something from the background music generator or so? No, not that. Okay. Do you remember? You sure you don't remember the answer you gave him about the ruby? I think I told them that I didn't care. I said I would be happy with whoever has it, I guess. Why? Well, I forgot. I told it belonged to one of them, and I don't think they really appreciated that. And my friend I was with, he said it was with the other one, and I don't think that part they appreciated either. Since and then they left us alone, and they. Okay, so you seem a bit frazzled. Are you okay? So you don't hear the scarabs in the background? No, I do not. Why? Well, when they left, I heard scarabs, just like they're creepy and like they're kind of crawling upon just the outer rim and just like a mountain of them, just click 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 click. Okay. Oh, no, do you hear the bats? I don't hear the bats, but my friend, he hears bats. The gawing and flying in the background. He actually had to go back to his room and rest because it just was driving him crazy. I do not hear bats or scarabs. But you say you started hearing these sounds after you answered these two strange people's riddle. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. Just you sure you don't see any? They might be coming to get. They sound hungry. I don't know what a scarab sounds like. They're hungry, but my money would be if they sound like this. Did you hear it? No, I do not. Unfortunately, my breakfast is here, and I am hungry. I tell my guest as my meal is delivered. Well, do you want to join me? But it sounds like you are more obsessed with these Beatles? Yeah, yeah. No, you don't hear anything. I saw you talk with those people. I gotta find out where the sound is coming from. It's driving me kind of crazy. No bats, no Beatles. You don't hear anything. None but your voice, good sir. Oh, okay. All right. Have a good day. Okay. You as well, and hopefully you solve whatever riddles you. Goodbye. Goodbye. And with that said, I am going to end this chapter, but please stay tuned for the next chapter. Last but not least, I will do a little self-promoting. As I have mentioned before, I have a Patreon account, and although I don't really expect anyone to donate to it, it's there if you feel the need to throw money at this humble voice. Thank you. Until next we meet, have a good night. Sweet dreams.
Friends, enemies, and those of you who have yet to decide which one you are, I greet you. Hello. Once again, the sun has set in my studio apartment in Japan, and it is now night. And we are towards the end of our tale for October. Let's continue, shall we? To recap our story, we are talking about the significance of 24-hour restaurants and diners, and how they are open even in the dead of night. As such, one particular fall season, I had found myself visiting Tokyo. While I was there, I had a case of insomnia where I visited such an establishment where I met two aggressively annoying people. Later on in the morning, while having breakfast at the same restaurant, a person came up to me rather distraught, having met the same people but not as unscathed as I had. Now, let us continue. To do so, I must talk about Tokyo just a little bit. Now, if you have not been to Tokyo, you probably have an image in your mind of a bustling city where skyscrapers are clawing at the sky with people, so many people, and many places of interest. If that is your image, you would be correct. While I was visiting Tokyo, I became so busy that I didn't get a chance to stop for a proper lunch. In fact, I decided to go for a quick rice bowl from the convenience store. Not enough to fill my stomach, mind you, but enough to keep me going. That is until about 6 in the evening. I found myself unable to move, too hungry to do anything, too tired and exhausted, and my arms carrying too many bags. So, I figured not to be picky. I chose the first all-night diner that I could find. Instead of a nice expensive restaurant, I wanted to save a little extra money because I had spent most of my money shopping. Now, I should note that this particular restaurant just happened to be not the same restaurant from my last two entries. Now, this will be important. Just bear with me. Now, I sat down, and since I knew of this restaurant's menu before, I quickly ordered without much of a second look at the menu, and as I was waiting at the table assigned to me, I noticed something wedged between the menu holder and the napkin holder. Confused and curious, I dug it out, and when I found it, I was for a moment speechless. You see, unless my memory failed me, or I was completely mistaken, or it was a copy, the item just happened to be The same ruby that I had seen the night before. The same ruby that two gentlemen, and I use that term loosely, demanded me to give ownership rights to one or the other, which I refused. This was the same. But how and why did it end up in this place instead of the other restaurant? As I was waiting for my order to arrive, I looked deeply into this ruby, curious and curious. It seemed to have gained more depth than when I first saw it. As I looked upon it, I could almost see. No, could I? Even now I doubt my memory, but it seemed like I saw a figure inside the ruby. Not a reflection, and not a miniature person, but a little hazy image. Hazy and without detail. At least that's what I think I saw. Stranger still, I seem to have images of places floating in my head. Places such as pyramids, deserts, sand, along with Gothic castles, large, enriched rooms with fabric walls. Both images collided. I couldn't figure out what I was looking at, but at the same time, was I looking at something? I was not sure. As these images continued to float throughout my brain, I got a sense of dread that quickly developed in both scenes, merging into one, as if one was destroying the other, but they couldn't do so, so they merged. This left me kind of confused as my meal arrived. I put the ruby down and started to eat, occasionally glancing over at the ruby, trying to figure out what exactly I experienced. Strangely, as I was glancing at the ruby, a thought grabbed a hold of my brain and shook some thoughts free. Thoughts that perhaps this was the key to causing a transition, the passing and going of one of the two, the desert or the Gothic castle. The end of a curse of sorts. Now, what kind of curse I do not know exactly, but it was a curse that could be ended by this ruby. Fortunately, or unfortunately, I do not have a Gothic castle of such magnitude, nor have I ever been to much of a desert or pyramids. So, having one or the other ending each other or being ended never really meant much to me, so I put the ruby back in its hiding place, paid my bill, and left. And that, I believed, was that. Until next time, where I'll have the afterthought towards this story. I'm going to end now. A quick reminder that I do have a Patreon account. If you feel like throwing money at me, that'd be appreciated, especially now. But until we talk again, good night. Friends, enemies, and those of you who have yet to decide which one you are, I greet you. Hello. The sun has gone down in my studio apartment in Japan, and it is time on this Halloween day for me to have a epilogue of my month-long story concerning the Scarab, the bat, their conflict, and me. Now, just to recap just a little bit, primarily my story involves Tokyo, about 10 or so years ago, and 24-hour restaurants. and odd people who I visited there at these restaurants, odd things that I saw at such a restaurant as well. Now with that recap concluded, let's continue with my conclusion. Now with my trip concluded, I returned to the city I was living in at that time. I don't remember if I used a Shinkansen, better known as the bullet train, or an airplane, but I do recall it being night when I returned, and I was hungry. So I went to the nearest 24-hour restaurant that was in my area. Now, something I don't see these days, a lot of restaurants at that time were experimenting with having tablets connected to the table, not for ordering purposes, but for entertainment purposes. Most of the tablets would have a few touch panel games for the children to play, or a few news sites for the adult to look through. As I was waiting for my order to come up, I decided to see what news I had missed while I was visiting Tokyo. Oddly enough, Tokyo was part of the news cycle. It's odd, you may become the tourist in a place, but you might not see the news that they are talking about because you're so busy playing the part of a tourist and good shopper. Among the typical political news or the sports news was two pieces of news of interest. One had to deal with a Halloween-ish exhibit of, believe it or not, a vampire coffin. Now, was it a real coffin? Possibly not. But it was designed to make people think about vampires. And there was a write-up of where the coffin was made and how it was made and who might have lived in that coffin. But it was all for show, apparently. The other piece of news was about an Egyptian exhibit and the fair that is usually connected to Egyptian exhibits, mummies, sarcophaguses, and other such things. Now, I'm not exactly saying that the mummy and the vampire were the same people who I met my first night in Tokyo, and I'm not exactly saying that the ruby I saw was something that could end both of their cursed existences, and due to hubris, they refused to let the other have it for whatever reason. I'm not saying that I am pondering it as much as you are, I hope. Now, with my story finally completed, I thank you, and I wish that you have a fantastic Halloween night. And remember, in the dead of night, forces beyond our understanding might meet in the most common places to discuss our fates. Now, let's move on to a little house cleaning. As you know, or may have guessed, I do have a Patreon account, and if you do feel like sending a little money my way, I do welcome it. Although, unfortunately, due to my scheduling this year, I really haven't been able to add too much art. But if you do partake in Patreon, you could tell me what you'd like to do for the next story. Until we talk again, I want to say good night, sweet dreams.